The palisade still stood, sun-bleached and silent, a single carved word catching dust in the grain. No bodies, no smoke, no boats, only an empty fort listening to wind off the sound. Welcome to Roanoke Colony, the lost word on the Palisade. We revisit a vanished settlement, a carved clue, and a coast where politics, weather, and distance turn certainty into rumor. Walk the sandbar with us and listen for what history kept. The first English footing. England's first serious venture into North America took shape in the 1580s, driven by ambition, exploration, and rivalry with Spain. Under royal patent, Sir Walter Raleigh dispatched his first expedition in 1584. The scouts returned with glowing accounts of the Outer Banks, a chain of barrier islands sheltering a vast inland sound. This narrow ribbon of land, verdant and low, seemed to offer a strategic harbor and fertile ground for England's colonial ambitions. By 1585, a small military garrison under Ralph Lane established the first English foothold at Roanoke Island. Lane's team of soldiers and surveyors treated the mission as both reconnaissance and occupation. Indigenous alliances were critical, and one man stood at the junction: Manteo, a Croatan who had traveled to England and returned with the English as both interpreter and guide. His presence offered a key link to the local Algonquian-speaking peoples. But peace proved fleeting. Tensions with other tribes, especially the neighboring Socotan, escalated. Misunderstandings and aggressive tactics led to skirmishes, and by 1586, relations had badly deteriorated. As starvation and conflict mounted, the garrison evacuated with a passing fleet under Sir Francis Drake. A few men were left behind, but no trace of them was ever seen again. In 1587, a more hopeful mission was launched: a civically focused colony of over 100 settlers, including craftsmen, women, and children. This time, their destination was the Chesapeake Bay, but their pilot, Simon Fernandez, unexpectedly set them ashore once more at Roanoke. The colonists, led by Governor John White, found the remains of Lane's fort battered and silent. Grass grew through the cracks of the earthworks. A single human skeleton lay among the ruins. They rebuilt as best they could. Wooden houses rose again among sandy plots of land, and efforts began to repair fragile relationships with nearby tribes. In August of that year, a child was born, Virginia Dare, the first English child born on American soil. But celebration quickly gave way to desperation. Food supplies dwindled and morale sagged. Urged by the colonists, Governor White reluctantly sailed back to England for reinforcements, a voyage he hoped would take only months. But war with Spain had consumed the Atlantic. The English crown demanded every ship to defend against the looming threat of the Spanish Armada. White found himself trapped in bureaucratic delays, unpredictable weather, and fractured fleets. His return, originally planned for the spring of 1588, was postponed again and again. Meanwhile, across the ocean, the settlers at Roanoke clung to survival, isolated between dense forest and shifting waterways. They traded when they could, planted when they must, and waited for sails on the horizon that never appeared. By the time Governor White finally returned in 1590, the centuries-old mystery of Roanoke was already unfolding in silence. An empty fort and a single word. In August of 1590, more than 3 years after he had last seen the colony, John White returned to Roanoke Island. The journey had been delayed by war with Spain, diverted through the hazards of Atlantic storms and shallow coastal shoals. His ship, carried by restless privateers, approached the Carolina coast with a sense of urgency. His time was brief, his hopes uncertain. But when he stepped ashore, the silence was immediate and complete. There were no voices, no smoke from hearths, no laughter of children. The settlement, once precariously alive at the edge of a continent, was now eerily still. Homes had been taken apart, not destroyed or charred by violence, but dismantled in a careful, intentional way. Doors gone, wood stacked or removed, as if the inhabitants had left on their own terms. One clue stood out. On a post of the surrounding palisade, carved in open, deliberate letters, was the single word, Croatoan. Nearby, the letters CRO were cut into a tree. White had left a specific instruction: The colonists were to carve a Maltese cross into the wood if they were in danger or departing under duress. No such symbol was found. There were other signs of movement. Tree trunks bore marks that suggested they had been felled and dragged. Belongings had been buried or removed. A small pinnace, a lightweight boat capable of coastal travel, was missing. All of it pointed to a planned withdrawal, not a massacre or quick flight. White interpreted the carving as a message, a trail marker pointing south to Hatteras Island, home to the Croatan people. It was there, years earlier, that relations had been most hopeful. The Croatan had assisted the English and sheltered them. Could the colonists have gone there? The rescue team could not wait to find out. As White prepared to set sail for Hatteras, weather rolled in. A violent gale tore their anchors loose. In the chaos, the ships were forced out to sea. White watched helplessly as the coastline slipped away under storm-lashed clouds. He never saw Roanoke again, nor did he ever reach Hatteras. His journals tell the story of what he found and what he did not. They hold the shape of a hope that has echoed ever since, that the colonists relocated willingly, that they survived, and that perhaps they waited, for months, for years, for sails that never pierced the horizon again. According to the preserved accounts now housed at the British Museum, these journals remain our clearest lens into the moment when Europe turned back to find emptiness, save for one word, carved deep into wood, then into history, between drought and diplomacy. The mystery of the Roanoke colony's disappearance did not unfold in a single night. It moved slowly, almost invisibly, through the months and seasons between 1587 and 1590, years marked by silence from across the Atlantic. When Governor John White sailed away in 1587, he left behind 115 men, women, and children on the edge of an unfamiliar world. He would not return for 3 years. In that span of time, nature and politics would conspire in ways that made survival increasingly uncertain. Dendrochronology, the study of tree rings, later revealed that the late 1580s brought one of the most severe droughts in centuries to coastal Carolina. Analysis of bald cypress and oak samples from the region indicates drastically reduced rainfall during those years. Rivers shrank, crops withered, seasonal fish migrations diverted. In a landscape where survival was already tenuous, water became a luxury and food a gamble. At the same time, diplomatic ties with nearby indigenous communities were delicate and shifting. The earlier Roanoke expedition under Ralph Lane had seen violence erupt with Algonquian-speaking groups, souring relations. However, the Croatan, centered around what is now Hatteras Island, remained a relative exception. Accounts suggest that when White departed, lines of communication were still open between the Croatan and the colonists. Faced with mounting pressures, dwindling supplies, failed harvests, and no word from England, the settlers likely faced a practical decision. Staying on Roanoke Island, with its sandy soils and fewer natural resources, may have seemed no longer viable. Migration toward friendlier soil and potentially welcoming communities, especially those of the Croatan, suggested a chance at survival. Evidence for such a plan comes in the form of a single word, Croatoan, carved into a wooden post at the abandoned settlement. According to White's journals, there were no signs of hasty flight, no symbols of distress. The carving was clear, deliberate. It points not to catastrophe but to relocation. Yet this possible move would have unfolded in a volatile human landscape. The Outer Banks and mainland were a patchwork of alliances and rivalries, shaped by intertribal politics, European intrusion, and scarcity born from the drought. A group leaving Roanoke may have split into smaller bands, seeking different hosts or simply separating as a strategy of survival. And without supply, ships to restock their needs, and without the consistent patterns of weather to guide their choices, the settlers may have found each obstacle heavier than the last. Even an ordinary mistake in an unfamiliar landscape, misreading a tide, offending a local chief, or simply running out of time, could shift the border between surviving and vanishing. By the time John White's sails returned to the Carolina coast in 1590, the colony he had left was gone. only earthworks remained. The Palisade stood silent. The fort, once the hopeful center of a new life, had returned to sand. Searchers, reports, and traces. In the wake of the Roanoke colony's disappearance, the Atlantic coast became a theater of suspicion and quiet search. Spanish intelligence, operating from Florida, kept a wary eye out for English strongholds along the coast. Reports dating after 1587 speak of searches, but none ever confirmed the presence of a surviving English base. To Spanish agents, Roanoke had vanished without a trace. Meanwhile, to the north in Jamestown, tales began to trickle in, more rumor than report, but persistent. Some decades after the colony's vanishing, the powerful Chief Powhatan told John Smith that a group of English settlers had lived near the Chesapeake. According to Powhatan, they ran afoul of his warriors. No bodies were recovered, no graves identified, only the echo of a story, filtered through layers of translation and time. The account of William Strachey, a Jamestown secretary, added to the puzzle. In his writings, Strachey described English men, women, and children dispersed among local indigenous communities, living possibly as captives, dependents, or kin. Yet modern historians debate the reliability of his claims. His sources were secondhand, possibly colored by colonial politics and wishful thinking. An unexpected clue emerged centuries later, closer to the source. Preserved in the British Museum, John White's hand-drawn map of the Carolina coast, an artifact from the 1580s, bore a curious alteration. Beneath a patch of paper lay what appears to be a small fort symbol, positioned upriver near where the Chowan and Roanoke rivers meet. Analysts believe the mark may indicate plans for a relocation site, one White never reached and never spoke of in his writings. Back at Fort Raleigh, the original settlement site yields little. The defensive earthwork remains visible, but archaeological surveys suggest a brief occupation in 1587. If the colony stayed, their mark is faint. If they moved, they buried their trail. Attention has turned outward. On Hatteras Island, formerly known as Croatoan, archaeological digs have uncovered European goods alongside indigenous artifacts. Items like wrought iron and copper, dating to the late 16th century, mingle with native pottery and tools. Some scholars suggest this hints at cultural incorporation, possibly even the blending of families. Yet no single artifact confirms the fate of any particular settler. Further inland, near Salmon Creek on the mainland, more signs have emerged. Fragments of early English trade goods, gun locks, ceramics, beads, have turned up in native village contexts. But like elsewhere, the context is contested. Were these items traded? Lost? Carried by survivors? The land holds its secrets, and it guards them well. What survives today is a constellation of fragments, a colored bead here, a rusted gun lock there, a cryptic line in a decades-old letter, and a papery patch on a centuries-old map. Each piece whispers a story, but the whole remains out of reach, elusive like the colony itself. One word, many paths. As investigators and historians sift through what little remains of the Roanoke colony, a tangle of competing theories emerges, each supported by fragments of evidence, yet none leading to certainty. Foremost among these is the idea of assimilation, a quiet merger between the English settlers and the indigenous communities on nearby Hatteras Island. The carved word Croatoan, found etched into a palisade post, suggests this direction. Archaeological findings of European-style artifacts among native domestic goods in the region seem to support such contact. But as scholars caution, such mixture could just as easily stem from trade rather than shared lives under the same roof. Another possibility points north toward the Chesapeake. Some accounts, filtered through secondhand colonial reports decades later, claim the settlers may have relocated there, only to meet a violent fate. Powhatan, the powerful chief in the region, is said to have spoken of an attack on a foreign group. But chronology is muddy and motivations remain speculative. Were they trespassers, or had their presence unsettled an already fragile balance? Natural forces may have played a more silent yet powerful role. Tree ring research, like that published in Science in 1999, confirms that the region endured one of its worst droughts in 8 centuries during the colonists' time. Waterways shrank. Crops likely failed. Under such pressure, the settlers may have splintered, each group seeking food, shelter, or safety among different tribes. Then there is the shadow of foreign hostility. A Spanish raid remains within the realm of possibility, especially given Spain's concern over English incursions into claimed territories. But surviving Spanish records are silent on such an operation. No documents surfaced to suggest any confirmed aggression against Roanoke from the Spanish crown. More than one theory entertains the image of desperate escape, colonists building small boats, putting to sea, and being lost to the fickle winds of the Outer Banks. Others widen the aperture further, proposing that what happened wasn't a grand vanishing, but a series of smaller dispersals. A family here, a party there, choices made incrementally as survival dictated. Each path branches from that one word, a signpost pointing toward alliance or refuge, but the landscape beyond it is clouded by politics, weather, and time. As the National Park Service and other researchers continually examine these threads, the truth remains deeply entwined with the land's silence. Every theory fits somewhere, but none quite fills the whole map. A mystery that shaped a coast. In the years that followed the disappearance at Roanoke, the event cast a long shadow over every new attempt to settle the American coastline. For the leaders of Jamestown, the fate of the vanished colony was more than unsettling. It was a stern warning. In their earliest writings, they referred to Roanoke not with curiosity, but with caution, citing it as a case study in what could go terribly wrong without reliable supply lines, wise diplomacy, or careful site selection. Yet, as decades turned into centuries, Roanoke passed out of the realm of record and into the fog of folklore. Stories blossomed in isolated towns and families, of strange blue-eyed communities deep in the interior, or of vanished settlers absorbed peacefully into local tribes. These tales spoke to a cultural need to resolve the mystery, even if the facts remained unknown. Today, archaeology pushes gently against the edge of that myth. Excavations at Hatteras Island, once known as Croatoan, and the preserved earthworks at Fort Raleigh are approached with patience and precision. Artifacts never arrive with definite answers, but they open new conversations. These digs are often done in partnership with descendant indigenous communities, centering their voices and histories in the unfolding story. The aim is no longer simply to find the missing, but to understand the world they inhabited. Scientific insights have added new dimensions to the mystery. Tree ring studies, published in Science in 1998, revealed that when the Roanoke colonists were attempting to survive, they were doing so during one of the worst droughts in 8 centuries. That kind of pressure reshapes decisions, turns risks into necessities, and diplomacy into desperation. The carved word, Croatoan, once seen as a riddle, is now also a message of survival, of strained communication under immense stress. It remains the only known clue left behind, and it now sits at the crossroads of history and humanity. Along the worn park trails at Fort Raleigh, or in quiet classrooms where the image of the Palisade appears on projector slides, the Roanoke mystery is no longer just about disappearance. It's an entry point into the complex web of colonial ambition, native sovereignty, environmental fragility, and human resilience. We may never know who left that message or what became of them. But in seeking an answer, we've come closer to the world they once walked, and to the many voices long kept silent in its telling. What the wind carries. The word carved into the old Palisade, Croatoan, offered what looked like a direction. But over time, it feels more like a riddle left in the open wind. A final message, perhaps, or a quiet echo of a choice made under pressure. In our search for neat endings, we often forget that history has no obligation to offer one. The Outer Banks coastline, like the story of the Roanoke colony itself, refuses to stay still. Sandbars shift with the tide. Marshland thickens and thins through the years. Droughts pull rivers low and then vanish beneath storm-fed swells. According to tree ring data from the period, some of the worst droughts in centuries fell across the Carolinas just as the settlers vanished. As the natural world destabilized, so too may have the human arrangements built upon it. Alliances changed quickly in the late 16th century. The native peoples familiar to the colonists were engaged in their own conflicts, adapting to the pressures of European arrival and long-standing regional rivalries. Records from John White suggest strained relations with some groups, but trust with others. A message carved into timber might have pointed not just to a place, but to a cultural crossing, an adoption of new ways, an abandonment of old plans. The missing colonists have become both myth and metaphor. But along the Carolina coast, fragments may still remain. European-style artifacts in native settlements, oral histories passed down through generations, shared agricultural techniques that bridge continents. These aren't smoking guns. They're traces, scattered, partial, human. The lesson that lingers from Roanoke isn't just one of disappearance. It's about what happens when certainty vanishes, when the world shifts and the plan dissolves. The stories that follow are stories of movement, adaptation, loss, and persistence. The carved word remains. Not a final note, but a wind-blown syllable from a longer tale, one still being written in sand, rain, and salt air silence. You have been listening to Nightmare Nook. Roanoke is not a riddle to solve, but a coastline to read. If this investigation stayed with you, subscribe, share, and join us next time as we follow another trail that fades into the dark.